concludes oral questions. We come now to order of the day for the address in reply debate.
Interrupted debate on the address in reply and the amendment proposed to it.
The Honourable David Parker.
Mr Speaker, we heard time and time again when New Zealand was unfortunate enough to have that crowd on this side that it couldn't be done. It couldn't be done. They told us that a ban on the foreign buyers of New Zealand homes would breach our existing free trade agreements. Were they correct? No, they were not. They said it would breach the China Free Trade Agreement. Would it have? No, it would not have. In fact, that agreement was so well drafted by the prior Labor government that we always protected the right of a future government to ban buyers of New Zealand homes, as China has the right to do in respect of New Zealand buyers of homes in their country, and as China has in fact done in respect of some of their big cities, putting aside the fact that you actually can't buy freehold land in China generally anyway. They said it couldn't be done because of the South Korean Free Trade Agreement. Were they right? No, they were wrong. Again, they were spinning. They were misrepresenting the situation. They told us, and they told New Zealanders, that it couldn't be done in respect of the TPP original agreement or the renegotiated improved agreement. Were they right? No, they were wrong. That's 3 out of 3 so far, so the list goes on. There is only one free trade agreement where there is a slight complication, and that is the Singapore Closer Economic Partnership. The proposed ban on foreign sale of existing homes to foreign buyers is consistent with all of our other agreements. Now, what would have happened if National had been re-elected and they had signed TPP? Would that have prevented policy space for a future government to ban it? Yes, it would. So what that government was doing was unnecessarily trading away the sovereign rights of a future New Zealand government to stand up for New Zealanders and say, look, there are some problems with the excesses of global capitalism in the world. There is this enormous transfer of wealth compounding every year, which means that the world's wealth, not just in New Zealand but even more so overseas, is increasingly intensively held by the 1%. Indeed, it's a fraction of 1%. And that fraction of 1% of the world own more and more of the world every year. The National Party say, well, it's okay. We think those 1%ers from overseas, they should be able to come into New Zealand and outbid a New Zealander for our homes. On this side of the House, we reject that we think that is abhorrent. We think that one of the ways you have to protect a liberal, open democracy connected to the rest of the world is you have to protect your local citizens. And in the Labor Party, we are proud to stand up for New Zealanders. In fact, we're proud to put New Zealanders first, sir. Proud to put New Zealanders first. Sir, we have fought hard on the international stage to protect the interests of New Zealand. We have advanced the interests of New Zealand. The other side said, oh, look, you don't need a ban. You don't need a ban. You need a stamp duty. A stamp duty will work, they said. A stamp duty is the answer. Were they right? Could that be done? No, they were wrong. The advice that we've had from officials is that a stamp duty would breach the agreement that the National Party negotiated with South Korea just a couple of years ago. I mean, that agreement was an example of the ineptitude of the National Party. Madam Speaker, do you know that, and congratulations, Madam Speaker, on your appointment. Madam Speaker, do you know that under that agreement, Korea retained the right to ban New Zealand buyers of their homes, but the New Zealand government said that they were giving it away. They pretended they had. They actually got that wrong. They didn't even understand their own free trade agreement. And then, sir, the nonsense of that was further shown by the fact that Australia negotiated that right for themselves in their agreement the year before. Now, look, Nationals' incompetence in respect of trade has been shown up. They never landed a decent multilateral trade agreement while they were in power. Sir, it's taken the Labour Party, with the support of New Zealand First and the Greens, to actually protect the interests of New Zealand in respect of land. Sir, other provisions that are protected, and the Prime Minister and the prior government do need credit for some of this. There is a good treaty clause which the Waitangi Tribunal has been happy enough with, that protects the rights of a New Zealand government to do anything in the name of the treaty, except impose higher tariffs. But anything in the name of a treaty. It's a subjective clause. It's not subject to ISDS provisions, sir. It's a very good clause. Sir, the prior government did protect the Model of Farm Act. We acknowledged that before the election. They did that well. This further agreement, the comprehensive and progressive TPP, sir, further improves upon that by suspending some of the patent provisions that would have put up medicine costs to the New Zealand government, not by an unaffordable amount, but by some tens of millions of dollars every year. And those provisions that were extending data exclusivity for biologic drugs have been suspended. Sir, we have narrowed ISDS clauses, Madam Chair. We have narrowed. Thank you. We have narrowed ISDS clauses, Madam Chair, by Madam Speaker, in a number of ways. The most easily understood is if you take the example of the Waterview Tunnel, and if that was built in the future by one of the original TPP 12 countries as negotiated by the National Party, and they had a dispute with the New Zealand government over the building of Waterview Tunnel, they could have taken them to an international investor panel, an ISDS panel, and effectively litigated their complaint there. This agreement narrows the effect of the ISDS clause, and there was objection to this from another country in particular right till the end of the negotiation, so we were arguing hard for this. That is no longer allowed. So if you've got a contractual dispute from an investor in a contract with the New Zealand government, they've got to litigate that dispute in the New Zealand court system rather than go to an ISDS panel. As the Minister said, the Prime Minister noted, we have got a long-standing agreement with Australia that we don't need these things as between each other, and so we've renewed that earlier provision so that the exempting of ISDS from Australia-New Zealand relationships continues. Further than that, we've sought side letters to similar effect with a number of other countries. I can't name them nor the number because those are still in negotiation. So the negotiations themselves were somewhat interesting. Actually, before I go into the negotiations, sir, the highest ever labour and labour enforcement standards are in the agreement. It's been a matter of record that a transitional period has been agreed for Vietnam before the enforcement provisions take effect, that gives them time to update their labour laws so as to allow freedom of association and prevent child labour and the like. Sir, the environmental space to regulate is very wide, and we're confident that the government's got full ability to regulate for the environment, for health and safety, for labour laws, for taxation. Public health and education are absolutely protected. There is no risk to them. Sir, one of the things we're going to do to take that message out to the country is to better consult with civil society, because one of the reasons there's been a bit of a backlash against trade agreements is that governments have, one, allowed the investment protocols to go too far, and we as a government are pushing against that, and two, have failed to properly explain the effect of these agreements. Sir, the negotiations were at times derailed. It looked like it was completely off. It's now back on the rails. Sir, we now have a stabilised legal text, and there will be gains for our exporters which build competitive advantage for New Zealand, which will mean more high-value jobs, especially as Minister Jones has already said, in the regions that grow and produce agricultural products. Sir, this shows what a good government can do in 3 weeks. We've got 3 years. Sir, by the end of 3 years, New Zealand is going to be a better country than it is now. We are going to be more prosperous, we're going to be fairer, and we're going to knock the rough edges off the extremes of global capitalism so that we protect the interests of New Zealanders and are a fairer as well as more prosperous society.
I call the Honourable Christopher Finlayson.
Madam Speaker, may I congratulate you on your